Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soul Journeys podcast. I am your host, Jennifer Longmore, founder of souljourneys.ca. I'm really excited to introduce you to Candace Craw-Goldman, who has been involved in the healing arts since the year 2000 and has studied with many healers across the world. Notably, she worked closely with the late, great Dolores Cannon from 2008 to 2014, assisting her in live trainings and programs and workshops. She's the founder of quantumhealers.com, which is a worldwide directory and support forum community for spiritual and energy practitioners of all modalities. She is also the creator of BQH, which is Beyond Quantum Healing, a heart-based limitless human consciousness exploration method for practitioners interested in limitless freedom and autonomy. She is known in the alternative and metaphysical community as a healer, writer, speaker, and avid dreamer of magical things. Candace, welcome to the show. I don't know why I'm saying it like that, but hello.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I do a lot of these interviews, but I've just had a grin on my face all morning knowing that I was going to talk to you. So I'm just thrilled to be here and able to chat with you today.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. And for those of you listening, Candace and I, as is the case usually on a podcast, you have a chance to talk a little bit behind the scenes. And Candace and I already knew this about each other, but we're both very acutely aware of the agenda. We're both awake, which I think is blessing and a curse, depending on the day, the day and the current mood. So we're going to be bringing you a whole other caliber of conversation today as it relates to our awakening journey. And before we do that, Candace, if you can just share a little bit more about your background, because I think it's helpful for people to know how you came out of the womb. And eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you could have gone in all different directions, but you and I are here talking about quantum healing right now.
Well, I kind of did go in all different directions, actually. But I lived your basic life until I was in my 40s, and starting probably in my teens, maybe even long before that, I realized that my body didn't respond to things like most human bodies did. And that is something that had progressed with me and increased with me. Basically, where I got to the part where, my husband said one day, there's always something wrong with you. I mean, it was never anything terminal or severe in that way, but I just had this body that was just like this barometer or something. It was always doing something strange, weird, whatever. And I was always trying to fix myself, mostly physically. And I was always trying different things. And I gave up on allopathic medicine at one point, and I hit rock bottom. I was doing professional photography in Austin, Texas at the time. And it was the morning of an incredibly important photography shoot for me. It was a area country and western singer. This was going to be the album cover for his third album. I'd already done one of his album covers, and we were going big on this project. And I woke up that morning. The shoot was 8 months in the planning, and I couldn't get out of bed because of my body. And I had to cancel everything. And it was really the dark night of the soul for me. That was what it was. And what ended up happening was I laid in bed, and after some prayer and asking the question a different way, I basically was saying to the universe, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? I've done everything. I've done everything I can think of. What am I supposed to do? And I had this profound out-of-body experience. I left my body and I stood in front of what I now know as to be my light council. And it was astonishing. The center being of this, it was 5 light body beings standing there. The center body literally handed me a piece of paper that had a list of 3 things for me to do on them that I immediately tackled the very next day. And it's a very long story, so I won't go into it, but it was the most magical day of my life. Truly, that next day was the most magical day of my life because I went down the list. And I have goosebumps just thinking about it. It was miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle the entire day. And it ended with the list was number 3 was have a past life regression. And towards the end of that day, as the other miracles were happening and I was buzzing all over, I stopped to get the mail. And somebody just out of the blue had sent me a Dolores Cannon book, one of her Convoluted Universe series, with a little note in there about how she was teaching past life regression. And maybe the friend who sent it to me, maybe we could go there. And that was the beginning of it all. And I just started following every little impulse that was put in front of me that you might call my intuition or my guidance or whatever. I just, instead of second guessing or whatever, I just followed it like a bird dog. And it got me to Dolores Cannon's class. And it was kind of nerve-wracking, but it was also, again, probably the second most incredible day of my life, because she had said in her class, for people who wanted to volunteer to be the demonstration subject, to put their names on a notebook paper that she kept right on her desk while she was teaching the class. And about the entire class, maybe 2 or 3 people didn't put their names because everybody wanted a session with Dolores Cannon. And I already knew that she was going to pick me. But I basically, in a way, I felt like I was testing God. I said, if she's going to pick me anyway, I don't need to put my name on that list. And I watched all my classmates except for a couple, and she picked me. She put the list aside and said, this is unusual, but my guides are telling me to have a session with Candace. So I was the demonstration subject in that class. And it was at that moment that I realized that everything in my life had changed. My entire focus of everything changed because I started 100% believing in that voice, even when it looked like that was the most ridiculous thing ever, was to follow my guidance, to not put my name on that piece of paper so that I could have confirmation that I was following my guidance in these other ways. And then that was it. And we hit it off, and I began to assist her very shortly thereafter. And I assisted her for many years, just about 6 years or so. And then she passed. And after she passed, a lot of things changed with her program and with her, those who continued on with her teachings. And I just went a different way and started to really blur the lines that was the box that she put around her method, and found that to be what other healers wanted and were looking for as well. And so that's where BQH came. But our directory and our wonderful support forum is so amazing because everyone there comes from different places. We've all had different trainings and different focuses and different teachers, but we come together to share. And in my mind, that's the way that the world is going. There's not one guru, even though it is my forum, my creation. I don't tell people what to do, think, or there's none of my, you don't have to adopt my rules or my ways of thinking. You just have to be kind and allow people to choose their own expression of reality. And it seems really basic to me, but I have found that there are many humans, even practitioners who are light workers, who they don't like that and they don't align and they don't fit, and that's fine. But our community basically is a horizontal one. We all come together like in a big round table, and hopefully we leave learning something, learning at least other perspectives from other people, but remaining autonomous and free as we go assist clients. The support forum itself is it's a service to others community is what it is. So it's not really for the public or anything, but we share different approaches and different things to try, and without limits. So that's basically how I got to where I'm going. After having my session with Dolores, everything that was wrong with my physical form slowly faded away. But I've actually learned and accepted the fact that Dolores has told me, she said, Candace, it's like you're in a concept car, it's not a car that's out on the road right now. It's like it's the outlier that the engineers have been tinkering on. And so it's capable of maybe some really cool things, but it's also in the shop a lot. Right. And I found that it's a marvelous way for me to accept my own physical life as I walk on the planet Earth, because I'm not done with those kinds of challenges. And as we've moved into this phase where we are right now on the planet, I'm certainly not done. But I've also continuously found that going back to that same thing over and over again, of following the guidance, of just figuring out how you do that within yourself, just your little arrow that tells you which to try or what to try, even if that thing to try is to say, no, that's not correct, and then switch course. I'm still doing that, but that's okay. That's okay. And I'm excited about waking up every day and seeing what there is to discover, even in this challenging world that we're living in right now. And it is incredibly challenging, for sure.
Let's talk about that, actually, because we were chatting about that before we started recording. How do we live in the paradox right now? We've got this, we're straddling two worlds. We still have mundane things of, I've got to brush my teeth and my hair, and I've got to eat and get groceries and all the mundane stuff that we do as humans. And then we are karate chopping all of the distortions and illusions of the old world, and really pretty much almost everything we've been told, right, is distorted. And then we're also trying to lead ourselves into the new world. We're trying to help others, link arms with others in moving into this new world. We've got all kinds of spell casting coming at us. We've got all kinds of interference of all kinds of layers, which we all know. And we're seeing a lot of very awake people suiciding themselves. We're seeing a lot of very awake people choosing what I'm going to call the 3D timeline, even though they're probably thinking they're choosing the 5D timeline, and everything in between. So what is the filter you put on every day when you get out of bed so that you don't get sucked into the black hole?
That's just an excellent question, because it was perplexing to me, certainly, as I watched this play out online in various communities, others, and even in my own, watching some of this. And, I'm an observer. As a practitioner, I'm an observer of life. I observe a lot of things. I live on a farm. I'm outside a lot, and I'm finding that I take my cues from the planet and the animals a lot of times. And so it was quite astonishing to me to watch some in the alternative healing arts lightworker community kind of embrace some of what is being offered to them that horrifies me and concerns me to no end. And I'm still working this one out, to be quite honest, but the most interesting perspective that I've heard back from some of them when I've asked, honestly, can I ask you why you've made some of these choices? And the answer that I've gotten back that I'm still pondering it's very similar from a lot of them, which is, well, I've just decided to have no fear about it, and I'm just going to transmute it all, especially talking about this thing. I'm just going to not be afraid of it, and I'm going to transmute it. And so I think about that. Do I believe that's possible? Well, yeah, actually, I do believe that's possible. I couldn't do the work that I'm doing without believing that is possible, because I've seen 3D matter change right before my eyes, but it doesn't always. And it doesn't always then, and it doesn't always just because you've decided to not be afraid of it. And I, in my mind, whether this is the right thing to do or not, I think about things like, I take it to the nth degree, and I think, Okay. So if I had a bottle of hemlock or some sort of poison, and I handed it to you and asked you to transmute it and then drink it, would you do that? I would think that most humans would say no, thank you to that. I just me, that's just me, but that's what I think. And then I know this is going to sound awful, but my mother was German. She lived through Nazi Germany. I've heard the stories. So I think, and it may be really awful to think this way, but there were some people who were taken out during that time because they went along to get along, and they were told that this was for their own good. Maybe even, a refreshing shower. Could they have transmuted that? I'm just kind of appalled at this. Quite frankly, I don't see it as being fear to have boundaries. I don't find that that's a fear thing. I don't feel that I'm myself living in, thinking about, wallowing in, promoting in fear of any kind. Simply boundaries. People who do this work for as long as you do, that I do, we have clients. You have to have had clients, mostly women, but sometimes men, who've been in abusive situations. They've been so coerced and so abused and so mind manipulated, and they are so controlled that they learn to apologize for things that, they probably don't need to apologize. They do things to get along, and they spout the correct answer so that they don't poke the bear or poke the tiger as much. And to me, that seems a little bit like what's going on here. But I have colleagues who I love dearly, who believe something completely different. And I do have very decent and kind conversations with these kinds of people. And the best way that those turn out in the end, in my mind, is when they truly believe they're on a different timeline. They are on this timeline, I'm on this timeline. And how's that going to play out? And I know people talk about it and they think about it and we discuss it. How is it really going to play out? I don't know. I actually was listening to something you said on a recent podcast about one foot on one line and one foot on the other. And it makes me think of a vision that I saw as a young girl, deep sea fishing with my dad. And more than once you'd see a novice boat person with one foot on the dock and one foot on the boat, and when the boat starts to go, you gotta pick one or you're gonna head down into the drink. And down there, it's not a nice place to be. It's ugly, it's murky, it's dirty, it's it's not a pleasant thing there. And that's the image that comes up to me a lot. And I don't personally think that one can not choose, right? So there's this other phrase that I've heard, and this was even before all of this that we're in right now came up, something that came up a number of years ago, where people would, in various situations, but I'm considering one in particular, where they would say, well, I'm just not going to get involved in this. I'm going to remain neutral. I'm going to remain neutral. And I'm like, you're going to remain neutral. And what I found, what going to remain neutral meant for a lot of people was they were going to say one thing publicly and believe another thing privately. And to me, that's a huge disconnect. And that's a huge thwarting of your own energy. And I've watched some of those people, and some of those people are light workers, and some of those people are healers, and they're still around. And some of them are still, from what I can tell, not that I know the insides and outsides of everyone's life, but there's still a lot of them out there who are doing that. And I can't do that. And the people that I align with the most can't do that. They can't compromise their integrity. They can't compromise their principles. They can't compromise their mission of why they've come to this planet. Now, that doesn't mean that I want to tell everybody else what to do, what decisions to make, or anything like that. No, you have to do that within yourself. And sometimes very hard choices have to be made. I'm sure you know people like I do right now who are doing things they don't want to do because they think they have to. Mm-hmm. But my first evaluation of people talking about those experiences, do you really have to do what you think you have to do? Step back from it a little bit. Step back from it a little bit and just see. A lot of people feel like they have no choice. They feel like they've been put into a corner. They feel like there's no way out. And I think more often there are ways out, or there's ways of looking for ways out, or taking a few deep breaths and looking around and waiting for creative ways to appear, to at least try before giving in to something that you don't want to do just to get along. Isn't that what we did, some of us, on the playground when we were 5, when the bully showed up and was beating up kids behind, the playground equipment and blooding people's nose and telling you not to tell the teacher or to stop him in any way so that he can make control of everyone? Some of that is what it feels like to me. It just feels like playground bulliness. And I'm not going to play that game. As best as I can, I'm stepping away from that, and I'm just not doing it. And so far that's worked out well for me. Even in where I live right now, which is rural Kansas, I haven't once, not one time ever, except for 20 minutes to get into a cardiologist appointment that I had to support somebody else. I've never even put on a mask. I've never done it. Mm-hmm. Even when it's been told to me, even when I was in and out of hospitals, I just wasn't going to do it. And I went in with this attitude of, I just don't buy it, and just don't ask me and don't talk to me about this. I'm not playing that game. And something about walking around with that attitude, so far at least. Now, look, I know I'm in a place that's not where other people are in, because some parts of the world, this would be, of course, impossible. But I think that's one of the reasons I'm here, quite frankly, here in Kansas. If I was in Australia right now, I'd probably be in jail, because I don't think that I could play that game. I'm not built for it. And I think part of why I can't play that game is informed by my ancestors, all of the stories, especially of my mother's side. My mother was a German girl in watching Nazi Germany. She was, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, ended up being, a young woman in Nazi Germany. And she told me these stories over and over again. And what she would tell me was horrifying. And I always imagined what it must have been like for her. So grateful that we didn't live in that world, right? So grateful. And she would say they would just do little things. And behind closed doors, the family would say, oh, it'll blow over. Oh, it'll be over soon. Oh, if we just don't make a fuss, they'll get over it. Whatever you want to call that, that's what I see happening right now. And others are not seeing that happen right now. And I know you've been very candid, Jennifer, and forthright about how you and your husband see the world differently. I barely know you, but I love you so much for talking about that. I love you so much for talking about that, because even though my husband and I are more aligned, there's still times when I will say something and I will remind him of a story that my own mother told me, or something that she went through, or something she watched. Like, here's one. This one happened just a couple of days ago. He said something to me about something, and he says, well, that's illegal, I said, you know what? When my mother snuck bread to the Jews standing in the work line, that too was illegal. Should she not have done that? And his response to me is, it's not the same thing. Oh, really? I'm not so sure of that. And it's my perspective versus his perspective right now. He comes from a much different perspective. His ancestors are different. His connections, his cosmic connections are different. Of course, his life contract is not the same as mine. I get all that. And we primarily really support each other, but he kind of thinks I've lost it and I've gone on some sort of extreme view of things. And do you know that in March of 2020, my eyes were like this, boing, and all I could imagine was they're going to force medical stuff on us. They're going to force medical stuff on us. And if people would actually have said that out loud, they were deplatformed or they were laughed at or whatever. And here we are. My intuition saw that clear as day, clear as day. And it's seeing some other things that are uncomfortable. Yet I am not one to put my head in the sand. There's a lot of words and phrases we use, right? Spiritual bypassing and things like that. And sometimes the use of these phrases is a little overdone sometimes because it hurts people. It hurts people. When I first started waking up, and it was a slow, gradual process that kind of ended with Dolores and all of that. I might have trusted the medical community in my waking stages. That's why I'm not upset with people. I'm perplexed, but I'm not upset because I can look at them and think, I remember thinking just like that. And trusting in a way. And actually I'm upset about the fact that I'm not as trusting. I'm a little more cynical than I used to be. And I'm sad for that. I'm very sad that I'm a little more cynical because doing this work that we do, it's so magical. I see stuff that still my jaw hits the floor sometimes, the things that I see happen in front of me or the emails that I get or the stories that I read about this work. And I don't want to be cynical. I want to believe in the wondrous nature of life and its expansion and its possibilities. But I find that I'm a little more cynical, and I haven't, not yet anyway, I haven't been cynical in a place where I've turned around and it's come back that I was wrong. Not quite yet. Most places where I'm like, meh, I'm not sure what's going on there. Case in point, and we didn't talk about this, so I don't know how you feel about it, but the whole thing that happened, on Facebook, right? Facebook being, going down, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I listened to a few minutes of and I will use this, whistleblower. And I'm watching this going, not so sure about that. Not so sure. I'm not convinced that it's not what it seems.
Mm-hmm. I haven't watched anything about that. So for everyone listening, we're literally filming this the day after the Facebook blackout gate 2021. Breaking news. I thought when I went to log on, I'm like, oh, they deplatformed me. It's like, so some of the stuff I post, right? That was my first thought. I'm like, oh shit, I thought I cloaked my profiles really well, but I guess I didn't. And then I called up to my husband. I said, can you check? And sure enough. And so for those of us that are Gen Xers, for example, I made a joke about, Gen Xers handled yesterday like a boss. And most people won't understand this joke because we were told, if you don't find something to do by 9 o'clock in the morning, I'll find something for you to do. And we were out all day. We knew how to entertain ourselves. We were latchkey kids. Don't come home till the street lights are on, right? So we just found something else to do. It was a great reminder for me that I keep getting the nudge to expand my platforms and not be too, hooked into one. I do think that the predictive programming we had in 2020 around cancel culture and the fact that Facebook could disappear and just some of the changes And then, yeah, like I don't even watch any of that stuff because I know anything that makes the news, anything, John Benet Ramsey, Madeleine McCann, OJ Simpson, anything that's making the news, Fauci and Ron Paul and all these people that are pretending to be everyone's buddy and we've got you, whatever. It's all just a psyop. So when I heard it was about a whistleblower, I was like, no, it's not. This is this is this is just typical game playing of Freemason puppets, right? Like, okay, so for 3D purposes, you try to, and interestingly, by the way, Twitter went up yesterday, right? And so we've got these two camps all owned by the same people, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, owned by that camp, and then LinkedIn and Twitter owned by another camp, right? And I haven't even looked into who owns TikTok and all these other Pinterest and whatever, but we all know they're owned. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a great reminder. It was fascinating to watch people respond to that because, you know, it's some people view themselves as victims of it. Some people are like, I'm in the middle of a launch, I can't post. And I'm like, but if you've already planted all the seeds and you're energetically allowing it all to compound, did you really need this one last day to really push it hard on Facebook? I mean, I feel for people. I feel for people that were running ads and various things and so on. But I think it's a good thing. And I think we can make the system wrong, but we have to acknowledge where we're making the system work for us. Like, I know who runs Facebook. You, all of us listening, and I know you do as well, Candace, we all know who runs Facebook, for example, but I'm still going to use the system to benefit my agenda, which is to be a contribution to the creation of the new earth, right? So if I have to play, people are like, how can you still be on Facebook? You need to be on Telegram. I'm like, do you really think Telegram isn't owned? You really think that? You really think BitChute, like anything we're seeing, any platforms are being created, anything that's being hosted, Zoom right now, we're on Zoom right now, and we know who owns Zoom. We know who owns iTunes. We know who owns all this stuff. And I think for us as awake people, it's about figuring out how do we use the energetics? How do we use these ancient technologies that we have access to work within this thing that we've chosen to be a part of and find a way to have it benefit us and benefit humanity while we're like, we have to build the plane while we're flying it, right? And so while we're building it, because we are behind the 8 ball, we don't have the same advantages. It is fascinating to me from a bully perspective, right? That they do catch you off guard, because if this was a fair fight, so to speak, and I don't like to use fight language, why aren't you giving us access to the same technology? Why aren't you giving us access to the same things like movie technology that can create fake explosions in the sky and make it look like aliens are coming to invade us and all the things, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad we're talking about that, because, you know, that was one of the things we were going to explore, right? Is how do we live in the paradox of all of this? How do we, you know, like we still, most of us, I'm not going to say all of us, but most of us are still banking. Most of us are still using things like PayPal and all kinds of other things that are owned by the system.
Yeah.
I trade on the stock market all the time. I'm well aware that the stock market is completely rigged. I'm well aware I'm investing in companies that, for the most part, not all the companies, are POSs. And I don't, you know, to your point around, I think what's happened for me over the last year and a half, especially, like, I thought I knew what my values were. This has given me an opportunity to really sink into my values. And I thought that my values were important to live by, but I realize it's my virtues and my principles, which is what you were talking about. Like you, I haven't worn a mask. I know you know that about me. I just refuse. It's not even on my radar to participate, and I don't even entertain it. When people say to me, oh, and I'm courteous depending on the situation, right? Like if I'm calling a place that I know is going to be super anal, like the dentist, I'll say, you know, hey, I don't want to, before we start booking, I don't want to monopolize your time, because I know it takes a while to schedule things and I'm not wearing a mask. So what is your preference? Do you want me to come at the end of the day so I'm not, in the thick of things? Do you want me to come in the beginning of the day? Do you want me to come after hours, before afters? What would be easiest for you to accommodate me? Oh, do you have a medical exemption? Well, like I asked, I'm just asking how you're accommodating people who are not wearing masks. So I don't answer their questions. I just don't entertain it.
Yeah.
And but even when I'm out in the world, it's fascinating to me, to your point, right? Like, maybe it's because I've done martial arts and I give off a certain vibe. Maybe it's just because I'm immune, because I'm not available for it. Maybe my guides are, who knows what it is, right? All I know is when I go out, people not only accommodate me, they thank me for not wearing a mask all the time. I get thanked for not wearing a mask. People go above and beyond, like at the dentist, they are like, I'm going to give you some extra toothbrushes. And like they want to, and some people, and I don't ask for this, but some people feel sorry for me. It must be so hard for you. I said, it is really bizarre to watch so many people think that a recycled piece of their flannel shirt with some elastic bands that goes around their nose and their mouth is actually protecting them from the deadliest virus in human history. Yeah. That's what's hard for me to watch. And they just kind of, because depending on who it is, right?
Sure.
But back to what you were saying about, you had so many golden nuggets in there. I'm laughing because I'm thinking, yeah, I get it. We can transmute a lot of things. We've seen a lot of miracles, but if you really are okay with putting poison in your body that you can't take out, you just can't take it out. They're talking about that, right? Because if you're going to argue science, then the science that says that you've now altered your RNA, DNA, right? Then you have to take that science in too. But if you really believe that you can transmute any poison, then why aren't you drinking battery acid every day? If you're such a master at transmutation, right? We're not taking those risks. And more importantly, when did we have to explain it?
Right.
I don't know why people would be surprised that I wouldn't be putting this in my body, aside from, just different disappointments and I'll say traumas from the medical model. Of ways that they didn't treat me effectively or didn't treat.
I didn't hear you there for a moment.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
So just different traumas, I guess is what you're saying. I'm sorry. You're back.
Yeah. Well, with the medical model, many of us have had traumas, right? That's part of why I had to go to naturopathic medicine, because I just wasn't getting the answers that I needed, because I have a body like yours, right? Where I don't get colds and flus and stuff. I get weird stuff. I get the weird stuff happening that makes no sense, right? But all of that to say that I'm vegan. I'm an energy worker. I connect with consciousness all the time. My first thought, and I'm just going to be honest, because I know you're being candid as well, and we're both pretty candid in our thing. Like, if you're claiming to be a clear channel, how can you be buying into any of this, any aspect of this? It concerns me. I can't refer business to you, honestly. If you're really thinking this is a thing, I can't refer business to you. And I'm sure you're a lovely person. And it's not that I'm not saying you, Candace, I'm just saying to the person out there that's kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth. Last year, there was a lot of Akashic record teachers, not in my school, but other places, that were like, come on, people, wear your masks. Of course, there's a virus. You're clearly not a clear channel. And I'm like, oh my God, there's no way you are accessing the Akashic records. There's absolutely no way, if you think this is about a virus, and that this shitty ass piece of cloth that's been on your face all day, filling with your bacteria that you now want to come and talk to me with and breathe that onto me, if you honestly think, then I'm concerned, right? Because in the lay worker community, a lot of people actually are awake. We're just backing the wrong horse, right? Like, we're not all in agreement about which horse to back.
Yeah.
And they know that, and the counterintelligence, the level of counterintelligence that's coming at us to have us buying into some of these false light teachers like Jay Shetty and all these other POSs, right, that have infiltrated our space. And, other people we probably won't even really know, even other truthers, other freedom fighters, that magically they have 10 followers and then magically they're on the world stage trying to get people riled up, right? We've had that happen in Canada a few times with some people that it only takes 5 minutes of digging to see that they're a Freemason puppet. But because they're on the world stage playing the role of, I'm just Mr. Joe Blow and I got arrested for not wearing a mask and look at what happened to me, right? Or the pastor in Canada that got arrested and is supposed to be serving jail for 6 years. I'm like, dum-dums, come on, dum-dums. Honestly, you're not even getting a court hearing for 2 years if you're lucky. You're not even getting a court hearing to initially hear the evidence, let alone get convicted and sentenced for at least 3 to 5 years in any court system, and all the court systems are backed up. So he got arrested 6 months ago because he opened his church. They made a big production on the news of all the cops that were surrounding it and turned it into a compound and put all these fences up. And he's now going to jail for 6 years for doing that. Come on. We've got to start using our noggin. We've got to get our crown chakras out of our root chakras. There is an importance of critical thinking right now, right? Aside from energetically tuning in, how do we get people there? How do we get people to really see and know that almost everything they're being shown is for a reason?
Well, the way that I approach almost everything, whether I'm teaching or in my own life, is to reference my own lived experience. And some of that lived experience is by watching animals, but some of it is by my own personal experiences. And one of the things that I have found is, I'm human like anyone else, and I'm often put in a situation where somebody wants something from me, or somebody is setting up something that I don't agree with, and I have to make a decision on how to respond to that, or agree or disagree, walk away, or acknowledge, or make a stand, or whatever. And so when I've learned to see when that happens, and I allow myself to have at least a breath at that moment, and I check in, I just check in. And even if the odds are infinitesimal that the way that my soul wants to respond is going to be either accepted or easy or, roses, I'll do it anyway, because I've just learned that even if it comes back and blows up initially, I've headed on the path that will, that's this integrity path for me. And that integrity, that path of integrity, and that path of truth and honesty for my own self, it doesn't mean it's direct or straight. It just means, oh, I'm being challenged with either choosing somebody else's directive truth, situation, whatever, or kind of my own. Which do I choose? Mm-hmm. And I really don't ever choose this one anymore, even if it causes something, right? I have to go through that something, whatever that is, but I don't do it anymore. And sometimes people will ask me a favor or ask me to do something, and then they'll follow it up with, well, you don't have to do it, and I know you're really busy. And I answer to them in this way, and it is 100% honest, which is just so true. It's just, I don't do anything I don't want to do anymore. I don't. Yes, for much of my life, and I think most people will do some things that's giving me goosebumps. Most people will just go ahead and do something they don't really want to do. And I'm done doing that. I've been done doing that for a very long time. And just to touch back on the mask thing, because at one point in the thick of it, and I was just in the local Walmart getting whatever I needed to get in the local Walmart. And even when I would look around and I'd be like, I'm the only one. I am the only one. I would notice that, of course. And one day I just walked in and I was headed to whatever, and somebody looked at me, and she started walking, like making a beeline right for me. I had just walked in. It was just a customer. And I saw her coming my way. I mean, she had me in her sights, and I didn't know who it was. And I thought, well, I guess maybe this will be the first time that I'm confronted, because I still haven't been. And she got right up in my face, and I was like, okay, well, let's see how this goes. And you know what she said, Jennifer? I love your sweater. Where did you get it? And it was just like, and I told her where I got it. And it was funny because of the theater that we have to play in. And, because I was on stage, in this public place, I thought maybe that I was going to have to go through that. And so I still haven't been confronted. It still hasn't happened for me. And I think some of that is because I am literally walking my own truth, my own walk. And I know that upsets people, including my own husband. Sometimes it just upsets him. And I'm sorry for that. But I know that compromise has to happen in a marriage. And that doesn't mean that I don't say what I think or believe or because I do. And I feel that frank discussions should be allowed, not just acceptance of one or the other's position or path. But there's this thing I wanted to mention, which is, here's what I've noticed. And I started noticing this. It was after Dolores died, and I went through some very challenging times and moving on. And I found that when I, in some positions, in some cases, took what could be really considered the David position versus Goliath, on the outside, I've found something I like to think of as like the boomerang theory. They're gonna throw a boomerang at me. And I'm just going to go kind of like this, and it's going to come around and smack their own selves in the head, because the intention of whatever's they're trying to get to me is coercion or control or manipulation or having me be disingenuous or could it be any one of those things? And I've gotten pretty adept at feeling this boomerang thing start to happen. And one of the ways I think I even know how this works a little bit is because in my younger days, I probably got hit upside the head with my own boomerang. I'm not an infallible human at all. I've learned many lessons. But going back to something that you said earlier about how do we navigate this? Well, here's sort of what I'm thinking about the 3D, 5D thing. I think, and there's so many different ways that people talk about this, what's actually happening. We have more DNA strands coming online. That's one theory that's out there. That's one thing that seems to be talked about. Here's what I know. I know to be true, at least on a worldwide level. I think we're experiencing what might be considered this accelerated evolution of humanity. Right? No matter what that looks like, whether you talk about it in the light language, 5D metaphysical, spiritual language that we talk about or use, or if you use other kinds of maybe more scientific and biological terms, evolution either happens slowly or sometimes very, very quickly. And I think that's what's happening. You can look at it from that point. And some of what I'm finding now, quite frankly, more interesting to listen to as I go about my farm chores or whatever I'm doing during the day, when I can listen to some things, is I'm listening to people outside of this community, because it's not just light workers. It's not just metaphysical people who are sending people. It's not just us. Even if I've got friends whose hearts are like this, who absolutely are following that path, but they don't know any of the terminology. They don't know how to, they'd be completely lost in most of the conversation that you and I have had today. And yet I can see what they're doing. I can see how they're living their lives. And they're doing that too, right? And some of what they're doing is simply following this thing in here. Another phrase, you used it yourself early when we began talking, remembering who we are. When I was four. I remember even at 4, I was allowed to play outside by myself. That was, 1965. So that was no big deal. You're 4. You know how to open and close the door, have fun, kind of edges of the country, not really suburbia, out there, horses, ponies, mini bikes, that kind of life I lived. But at 4 years old, I could go out the door, and I spent hours by myself. And I remember sitting under this tree, shaping just dirt piles with my hand. And in my head, I was almost left my body then too, I guess. And I'm imagining consciousness being like that dirt pile, being like the earth, and my consciousness being outside the earth. It was symbolic for that, right? And it was profound. It was this profound experience I have when I'm 4. And as I'm shaping with my hands this dirt, I am hearing, remember. This is when you're supposed to remember. Just remember. And it was kind of in this way too. Remember this time, just remember that you are shaping the earth. You are shaping your own life. You are. It's not the outside influences. It's you. And so when you bend or do things that you don't want to do, it feels yucky. Even people who are rolling up their sleeves or doing other things that they don't want to do, or even donning the mask, and it feels yucky. Well, I think you dim some of that. You dim some of that connection, and you're replacing it with something else. And that is never meaning to hurt or coerce or manipulate another's path, because that's something else that's a really interesting thing and a really interesting way of looking at it. Doing BQH, QHHT, past life regression, Akashic records reading. We take on these different roles to learn these different things. And if you've taken on a role to be an aggressor or something, to learn to understand that from the inside out. Well, how is that all going to play out if everything evens out and you throw out your role in the middle of your assignment, so to speak? So even those puppets, as I'm watching them, I try to consider them as the people who are showing us what's really going on, and showing us how powerful we can be, and showing us how we can be completely something organic and not replicas of them or their energy, which is getting easier and easier to feel, right? Case in point, what we just talked about. Of course, when people are going to listen to this, it's going to be in the future, and maybe more will come out. But yeah, the whistleblower didn't seem much. She didn't feel like she had the energy of that. She just seemed like another captured player in this kabuki theater that we're in. But here's another thing I've been thinking about. I was thinking about this ever since we talked about talking. You know how we as healers, we talk about the fact that very often you repeat the same mistakes. You repeat the same mistakes. And we talk about how that's peeling the layers of the onion. We use that metaphor a lot. You're just going to peel another layer of the onion, and we're okay with that. And we forgive ourselves. I think humanity is doing that too. I think humanity has done this time and time and time and time again. And I think we're just doing that again. And I think maybe we're doing it faster. Maybe we got a big, few layers of that onion this time, since the whole world is involved. I mean, the whole entire world, pretty much, save for some pockets. And so that's what I look at and think about as we're going through this, but I've put aside this idea that everything's going to be okay next week, or even, in the next little while. I think we're in this for the long haul. And I think we need to get our stamina. And we got to get our stamina from being outside is my big one. But there's others. Can I tell you a story? I haven't even talked about this very much. I haven't even really thought it all the way through, but there's something there. Maybe something about the symbolism, or maybe you can read the energy and give me your perspective, because I'm still working this out. It was a big event, a celebration having here at the farm. It was with my dad and myself. I called it our 151st birthday party. He was turning 91 and I was turning 60 this past August. But we had it in September, and we had people here. And part of having people here, we took people on a tour of our farm. We have some acreage, and we have a lot of owls, and we have a lot of eagles, and we have a lot of falcons. We have a lot of different wildlife, but many, many different kinds of birds. And it's particularly thick with owls, particularly thick with barred owls, and lots of hooting and lots of symbolism. And I think communication, real communication from the animal spirit guides, And I had some close contact with owls in the previous weeks, including one in the middle of the day. I was out riding a meditative journey that I call Organic Human. And out from this tree comes this owl, and it swoops down right in front of me, like right at eye level in the middle of the woods. And it goes up this way, and it did this thing right in front of me. It made this gurgling noise. I'd never heard this from an owl before. It wasn't really a hoot, but it was sort of like this little warble right in front of me. And it was, owls are big things. Their wingspans are out here. And it was so profound. And the whole time I'm sitting there riding this journey, the different animals came and gave me messages, and there were different owls. And I was then sometime later crossing that exact spot in a little four-wheeler vehicle with some friends that I'm showing the back end of the property. And we're headed down to a creek bed and come back up. But I was at the exact spot where I had been sitting, writing all of this and having this owl experience. And the fella next to me said, "Oh, look, what's going on there? Is that a hawk?" And I looked up ahead, and it was much bigger than a hawk. I said, "That's an eagle. That's an eagle." And it was just ahead of us. And it was on the ground, and it was eating an owl. It wasn't a full-grown owl. It was a juvenile owl. But it looked up at us, and it met our eyes. And I'm still sort of decoding all of that, right? The eagle, it means so much to Americans. The bald eagle is our national bird. But, when I think about the symbolism in all of this, the golden eagle with the very straight thing and the eye looking this way, that was the Fourth Reich symbol. The golden eagle like that, right? So I'm looking at this eagle, and it wasn't bald, it was a golden one, and it was eating this owl, but it was so in charge of this owl. And then we turned, and later I went back that day, and I went to that spot just in reverence for what I saw, and still trying to sort of decode what message am I supposed to get out of it. And there was the juvenile's feet in the path. The eagle had gone. The eagle had its meal, and it had gone. And well, I'll toss it to you. What do you make of all of that? I have various things coming in. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have made any conclusions, but I believe something's there.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the fourth right? And the US symbolism, right? Because we know that's all Freemason stuff, and they invert everything, right? They invert the medicine of these totems for us, and try to create confusion and so on. So I found that interesting. And the fact that you're kind of cannibalizing your own, right? We do see that. I do see that we're going to have a lot of people turning on each other, even if it's etherically. We're seeing that, right? We're kind of cannibalizing our old culture, right? People are willingly handing themselves over to a new culture, which the word cult is in culture. And when you see people walking around with masks and all the participation and all the justifications they give to the participation, I firmly believe that it's our job to hold the line. And right from day one, with me not wearing a mask, I'm not just doing it for me. I'm actually doing my part. If we're going to talk about doing our part, the more of us that comply and are complacent, our complacency makes us complicit in the plan. And so you can't complain about this plan rolling out if you're participating in it. Honestly, that's my opinion. But that being said, I will see a lot for sure, right? And you and I have the ability to see, from the beginning, right? It sounds like we both I saw a movie play out. My guides showed me a movie. And so, yeah, I have to wonder, because I think this leads nicely into where I want to wrap up for today is, we've been hearing for a while that we're going to have a mass exodus off the planet. I don't even know that it's necessarily because of the pokeroo or because of the cocoa, right? I'm seeing a lot. I'm even seeing a lot of people posting about their animals passing. Not that animals have done anything wrong. I don't mean that, or that anyone, of course, that's passing is doing anything wrong, but more the energy of, there's a big portal of transition, I think, right? We're either transitioning into 5D or we're transitioning off the planet, because people that are making choices to try, and even that, like we talked about, the healers that are making the choices to put things in their body, claiming that they're choosing the 5D timeline, but really what you're doing is choosing the conveniences of the 3D old world that's already going to go away. They're already showing you the psyops for career, the great resignation. You can fly, you can't fly unless you have it. Oh, now you can't fly if you've had these types. Oh, pilots don't, all the things, right? Constantly creating the confusion matrix. But I do see that, we know there's something big coming because we can feel it in the air, right? And I have to, because owls tend to have that vantage point. I'm curious to hear from you, what kind of things do you think we need to prepare for over the next 12 months? Because we can keep looking like way into the future, but what are some
Sure.
I know that you're highly intuitive, right? So what are the energies that you're picking up on, and how do we prepare for that?
Well, again, bringing it back to a personal thing, and people can relate to this. I don't know of one family who doesn't have some division in it right now. Not one. At least, maybe even their nuclear family may be aligned, but extended family, once you start moving out in those concentric circles, and some of the people who have made a different choice than you have made a different choice than you. It's just that true. And they have set in motion a path, and we have to be ready for whatever that looks like. Right. And that's not to create a doomsday scenario, because, here's one of the things that I keep coming back to, doing this quantum healing work, and seeing, as long as there is life, there's possibility. As long as there's life, there's possibility for things to happen in front of your face that you couldn't even imagine. I say, I'm an eternal optimist in that way. I say, always make room for that. Just always make room for that. Don't, in your own mind, come to the conclusive, chiseled in stone ending that may seem obvious to you right now. We can all get a sense of what's coming. I think nobody really knows. I think it's also shifting a little. It's shifting a little depending on what's going on. This is like a great big giant chemistry experiment. If you can imagine a great big dish of some kind, and you're putting in different energies, it's going to change what the outcome is, right? And sometimes the smallest little addition can make the biggest amount of change. I mean, I've just seen that happen. And sometimes realizations can be small but profound and instantly change directions in some way. I've just seen it too often to leave that out. I cannot live in a world where I wake up pessimistic about the outcome. I can't live in that world. That's me personally. I can't. So, and I believe in enough of the reason why I'm here is that my input in this is going to change the potential outcome. That I hope that doesn't sound conceited or overly powerful, but I believe in every human's a potential to shift the outcome. I think everyone, and even no matter what decisions they've made up until now, just seeing it from a different perspective can literally change everything. We've all in our lives had moments where we've had realizations that just change everything from that moment on. From that moment on, things look differently. And I think that humans have a lot of that in front of them still to possibly help shift everything that's going on right now. So I remain optimistic, but looking within yourself and feeling what still brings you joy and what helps you remember the essence of you, the absolute human essence of you. And a lot of that means get away from not even just the internet or devices, but electricity and the grid. I sometimes get into a lot of trouble with my husband, who wants me to take my phone when I go on my hikes or walks or ride my horse. It's just safer. Well, I don't want it. I don't want it on me. I need to leave this house to get back to that place where, and you know what it is? It's like it's a discharging. It's like and sometimes just doing something as specific as this, put your back up against a tree. For me, my legs around a horse is the most brilliant, wonderful thing ever. If you can do some of that or whatever, it just comes off of you. The planet can recycle that energy and use it and fill you back up again. And if you don't do that a little bit, if you don't do that just a little bit, you can kind of dig yourself into not a happy place. Even before I knew about any of this, I knew, and I committed it to memory, that when I didn't feel well, I would just go outside. Even if I was having an anxiety attack, or if something was really hurting inside of me, if I would just go outside, it would feel better. And so I think that's profoundly important, but also to follow those little nudges, like we've been talking about throughout our talk together. I just followed one myself. I was having, and this is very specific, but I think it's beautiful, and it kind of illustrates something. It goes back to the weird body that I'm living this life in. And I've been having this, let's call it a discomfort. I've been having a discomfort in my body that I couldn't put my finger on. It didn't follow any rules. It didn't, you already know what I'm talking about. It didn't make any sense with anything like diet or this or activity or whatever. And so I'm sitting with myself a lot. I'm doing the other things, but I'm missing something. I'm just missing something a little. And I sat with myself and really said, just allow me to take that step that will show me what it is, so that I can figure out what is unbalanced within me that I'm needing to feel this. And I connected with the angelic realm in my case. And I used to do something years ago in Austin. I did infant bereavement photography. And that was actually number 2 on the list of 3 things to do. The 3 things I was supposed to do to help my body, right? Number 2 was to volunteer for this organization. It's called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. When I moved from Texas back to Kansas, one of the first things I did was look for that chapter here in Kansas, and they didn't have one. And they said, you could be the coordinator. I'm like, no, plate's too full, can't do that. But just the other day, I sitting and speaking with the angelic realm about this, and I got that hit again about this work, taking professional photography, images of a family grieving the loss of a stillborn baby, or a baby who needed to be removed from life support, and being surrounded in that hospital room with the incredible angelic presence, and also getting your own mind off of whatever's going on with you, right? And being in service to others. And do you know, the instant I started to go down that path, all of this discomfort, poof, it's just gone. It's just gone. Now, the logical person, the scientifically minded person would say, oh, come on. The thing that was disturbing your body, how could that have anything to do with an activity that you want to now engage in again, that you haven't even, I've just started to gather the equipment and got the requalifications to do all this. But since I started walking down that path, I'm golden. I'm golden, right? It didn't have anything to do with a diet. It didn't have anything to do with a supplement. It didn't have anything to do with anything except for looking within me in a way and saying, what is it that my soul is hungry for right now? And my soul is hungry for being in this place that, and then going back to the world situation, I think many people are leaving the planet. And I think it's adults, and I think it's young humans too. And I know I'm supposed to be there helping in that way. And I think you kind of have to just prepare yourself. Most of us have lost somebody, a parent, a grandparent, a pet, a friend. Remember what got you through those other times. And it doesn't mean to not grieve. And it doesn't mean to not feel sadness. As a matter of fact, that's the wrong thing to do, is to try to push that away. Just let it flow through you. You're a human. It's okay to feel that. You're a human. It's okay to be angry when you see some things that you see happening out there. It's okay. This bypassing of grief or anger or sadness or whatever, don't do that, because all you'll do is tuck it away inside of you somewhere, and it'll fester and come out in another way. But do prepare yourself and really see, either in meditation with a practitioner of some kind that can help you explore your consciousness. What is it that's really important to your soul at this time? Because you are on this planet now. It's like you've won a lottery ticket to be here. You have won a lottery ticket to be here, no matter how painful it is. You might as well figure out or start to walk down the path of fulfilling the soul potential that brought you here to begin with. And it may not be instantly, immediately clear. Sometimes it takes a while to figure that out. And sometimes you have to just start that first step. And sometimes you have to hit a wall before you take a left turn or a right turn. And that's okay. That's okay. As a matter of fact, sometimes you needed to do that for additional learning or fortification, shall we say, right? So be nice to yourself, be ready, but do things for your joy, your passion, and your soul. Not to get along, go along and comply. Because we're never going to get out of this if we keep agreeing.
Awesome. Well, we are going to have to wrap up for today because we're at that time. So we'll just have to have you back on the show. But I know people will be wanting to get in touch with you. They'll want to follow that nudge that you were mentioning to find out more about how they can stay in touch. So can you give us a brief overview of how people can follow up with you?
Sure. Best place is my website for healers and practitioners is quantumhealers.com. But I also have my own personal website, and that's my name, Candace Craw-Goldman, with no hyphens or anything, .com. Both of those places will get you to me or to other practitioners who do the same kind of work that I do. Thank you.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for being with us today. We have so much more to unpack with you. So we'll definitely have to have Candace back on. And between now and then, sending you lots of love. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.